Alright, my super fam, 5.2 is right around the corner and that comes with new character. This time around is going to be our lovely Chasca. Now comment down below if you're going to be the one who's going to be pulling for Chasca anyway. But while regardless of whether or not you're going to be pulling for her, I'm sure this video is going to be very valuable to you because we're going to be looking into some of the information we've got on Chasca and discuss a little bit about her before her pre-release, give my thoughts on her, and may potentially helps you to decide whether or not it's going to be worth it for you to be pulling on Chasca. Natlan is finally here, and of course that comes with many new characters that you would want to pull. Now if you're planning to swipe for pulling, then don't forget to check out Loot Bar. If you know me, I've been recommending you guys Loot Bar before, since you can always save almost a 20% on all of your top-ups. With over 100,000 orders and so many good reviews at this point, you can be sure that Loot Bar is trustworthy. To demonstrate it to you, I've been topping up my Genshin account through Loot Bar, buying the highest Genshin package. The only information you would need to fill out is going to be your UID and server region. Then go through the checkout process. After completing, the top-ups will come to your account within 5 minutes. Usually it just comes instantly for me. Here you can see my order receipts of all of my top-ups that I have done. So guys, be sure to check out Loot Bar through the link in my description, as it can be a great way for you to save your money, especially if you are topping up a large amount. First off, let's take a look into her skill and kit. Now, if you've already watched the live stream, you should have a bit of understanding about it. And of course, I've already explained a little bit about her skill and kit through this specific video of mine. But either way, what you want to keep in mind is that you're not going to be using her normal attack in any way, and the most important thing starts to come in whenever you hit her E skill. To put it simply, you're always going to be holding down her E skill, charging up her bullets. She's going to be having a maximum of 6 bullets. Now, as we know before, she is an Anemo character. However, what we can see here is that her bullet can be converted into different elements as well. So once again, let's take an example of a team that Chasca is going to be running in. Like for example, she's going to be in like a Bennett Xiangling and a Kazuha team. Just an example of a team building here. So how the bullet conversion work is that the first 2 bullets, when she is in her C0, is always going to be her element, which is Anemo. The third bullet, whenever you have her passive talent 1, is that the bullet will have a 33% chance to be a random element of the remaining 3 character on your party. So in this case, we have 2 Pyro character and 1 Anemo character. Therefore, each of the type has a 33% chance. So if each of the type have a 33% chance, you're technically looking at a around 66% chance of it being a Pyro bullet and a 33% chance of it being an Anemo bullet. After that, the 3 remaining bullets are also going to be converted into the elemental types of the 3 other party members on your team. Now before, if I remember correctly, it is considered to be in order of left to right, but recently I've heard that it would be random. So we're going to be assuming that the order is also going to be random here, but technically speaking, you're going to be having 2 Pyro bullets and 1 Anemo bullet being converted. Now likewise, for example, if we were running in a different team, for example, we're running Chasca in a team like Bennett, Furina, and Auroron, for example, then again, first 2 bullet always going to be Anemo. For the third bullet, there is again a 33% chance of being one of the other element, which is Hydro, Pyro, or Electro, and then the 3 remaining bullet is randomly going to be Electro, Hydro, and Pyro. Now something you do want to note is going to be regarding her scaling. Now obviously I can't show you the specific scaling right here because it's not official information yet, but from some of the information we know, her first 2 Anemo bullet generally do not have a very good scaling, and the majority of damage is going to be the bullet that is going to be converted, or in other words, the skill here says that they are shining Shadow Hunt shells, which technically has one of the higher scaling within her kit. Therefore, you would definitely want to maximize these bullets of her, and of course we're going to be discussing more of this into her build section, but that is something you want to look out for. Now for her elemental burst, what she's going to do is that she's first going to shoot out a giant OE animal damage, and then after that she's going to fire an additional 6 extra bullets, and then depending on which other elemental type character you have on your team, 2 of the bullet will undergo the specific character's elements. So for example, again, for you to easily understand, if it were Bennett, Xiangli, and Kazuha team, From what I know, there's going to be 2 bullet of Bennett element, which is Pyro, 2 bullet of Shangling's element, which is Pyro, and then if I'm not mistaken here, 2 bullets of Kaza element, which is going to be Anemo. Now, her burst energy cost is 60, which is technically on, the medium side. However, as we can see from the live stream, she's probably not going to be generating herself that much of an energy. Therefore, if you do want to have her burst every single rotation, that is a little bit going to be on the harder side. Obviously, if you do have good enough energy regen within your artifacts, that's going to be not too hard. But even though her bursts do quite a bit of damage, I think unless you have your other party member holding the Favonius weapon series to help a lot with particles regen, it's still going to be okay if you do her burst once every other rotation. Now for her passive talent, we've already discussed a little bit about her first passive. For the second part of it is also slightly important for you to focus on this. So basically, Chasca's Shiny Shadow Hunt Shell damage is going to have an increase depending on how many different elemental type your party member has, up to 3 different elemental types. So basically, if you have 4 different elemental character on your team, you're going to get a 65% maximum damage increase, which is rather nice. That is technically going to be affecting your team building quite a bit, but we're going to be discussing that in the team comp section later on. Our second passive talent is basically nothing too much, it's just there for you to get more damage off with Chasca after your party member triggers a Night Soul Burst. Very easy trigger, you don't really have to be mindful of it, and overall as you play your team out, you're just going to do this automatically. So overall, that's going to be the nitty gritty of Chasca Skill and Kit. I hope that the explanation helped you understand a little bit more of what she's able to do. So basically how she's going to be played, and especially when played in a team, it's going to be rather simple, right? You're going to be setting up your other party members elemental burst to help her out, and then after that you switch into Chasca, hold down her E skill to charge up her 6 bullet, and then fire it off. Now in one of her Night Souls rotation, you can technically deal around 3 bullet shooting rotations. Now obviously that's going to depend on how much you are required to dodge the enemy's attack and some other situations, but she's not going to be a character you do one charge attack and then that's going to be it. You should be able to do at least 3 charging bullet stacking, which in my speculation should be around a 10-second on-field time. So I don't think you really have to worry too much about your other characters elemental burst going out. But while obviously that is my speculation at this point, we'll still have to test out her rotation whenever she officially comes. With that in mind, I want to discuss a little bit about her potential pros and cons of what I'm seeing here after we know about her skills and kit throughout the live stream. Is that on the upside, I think she's going to be having the potential of doing pretty decent damage. Now I say decent is that she's going to be able to do good damage, however she's not going to be on the level of characters such as Novlet, Alikino, because they are obviously going to be on a totally different tier. But if you're into Chasca as a DPS character, I can say that you're probably not going to be disappointed. She's going to be on the DPS level of characters such as Garan, Alhaitham, those kind of character probably. In other words, on the higher tiers of if you're looking into tier list, making out rank her in probably in A tier. That's my speculation at this point in time, whenever she's in single target situation. However, if there are too many enemies on field in AoE situation, she's probably going to be in a B tier from what I can see, which moves us into the downside a bit, which as you may or may have not known, whenever you charge up her bullet, she's going to be marking your enemies on the field. So basically she has 6 bullet, that's going to be a maximum of 6 enemy on the field, and her bullet I don't think has that much of an AoE either. Therefore, if there are too many and spread out enemies on the field, she's only going to be doing a damage to a maximum of 6 enemies. Now obviously if they are grouped together, I do feel that her bullet damage will still spread, which obviously is going to be good, but I don't think her teammate is going to be having any of the good crowd control characters, so I don't think that's going to be able to discuss much. Therefore, if she is in a single target situation, all of her 6 bullet are going to be focused on one enemy, which of course is definitely going to be a lot better, similar to how Navia works, right? The more single target situation she is, the better she's going to be, and I feel that Chasca is going to be in similar situation situation as well. And obviously, if you're relying on Chasca to do good reaction damage, I don't think that's going to be pretty much the case either, especially when she's in AoE situation. As you can see, she's marking each of the enemy a single bullet, and once you shoot that out, that's only going to be a single elemental applied onto your enemies. Obviously, your other party member is going to be potentially applying elements on your enemies as well, but in terms of triggering elemental reactions, I don't think she's going to be that much of a reliable case even when she's in a single target situation, because as we know, her other remaining 3 bullets order are technically random at this point in time. Hopefully they are going to be in order so that our team building is easier in terms of, you know, having her trigger elemental reactions. But since it is random right now, it's almost very hard for you to actually guarantee what kind of elemental reaction she is going to be able to do all the time. So I obviously going to recommend you to not scratch your head too much and then try to get perfect elemental reaction whenever you play her. Another thing that I have seen is that many of us may be still thinking that she is an Anemo DPS, which I would have to say she is technically not, because as you can see before, her only 2 Anemo damage is going to be the first 2 bullets. However, her scaling on those 2 bullets is generally very low, and then the majority of her damage is going to be focusing on pretty much the other shining Shadow Hunt Shell, which is the bullet that is elemental converted. Therefore, characters such as Farazan being on her team is generally not going to be recommended, just so that you guys are aware before we even touch on her team comp section. So those are going to be, you know, the potential pros and cons of her at this point in time. Obviously guys, she's not released and we're only basing on pre-release information that we've got on Chasca at this current point. Hopefully some of the downsides that we've discussed here are potentially going to be fixed whenever her officially arrive. With that, let's discuss a little bit about her building sections. First off, her artifacts build, I think it's going to be very much straightforward into which set you're going to be building, because that is obviously going to be the Obsidian set. I cannot think of pretty much any reason why you're not going to be going this set for her unless you're very much earlier on into the game and you don't have access to this domain. Really guys, go with this set no matter what, because you know the crit rate is just too good for her, very easy to trigger, because this set is literally made for Natlan DPS character. You know, other than that, if you really want to brute force it, then you know the Marshose has a good potential if you're using her on a Farina team, but I don't know why you would want to have it, because you're technically stuck in pretty much a Farina team for Chasca. Other than that, you know, the Wanderer troop is kind of nice, but obviously not recommended, and the very desert hunt set is definitely not recommended, because again, as I've mentioned, she's technically not an Anemo DPS, and as well triggering for the resistance shred is not that reliable as well. So yeah, better save this set for other character on your account. Now the artifact stats is when it comes a little bit more tricky, depending on which team comps you're building of course, but the general rule of thumb is you going to be using attack sands, attack goblet, and obviously a crit circlet. Now attack goblet is, I'm pretty sure you guys understand, because looking at how many different elemental type bullet that she's got access to depending on which team comp you're building her in, having an attack goblet is pretty much the safest bet into having her doing good damage overall into her different elemental bullets, which I believe she's probably one of the first characters that can safely be good on an attack goblet for a DPS character building. Now she can use elemental goblet depending on which team you build. We're going to be discussing a little bit more about that whenever it comes to team con section. However, that's going to be rather a rare case, and I don't think many of you are going to be using it like that. Moving on to her weapon, I think she has rather nice weapon lineup, very good free-to-play options, and obviously 5-star options as well. Obviously her signature is definitely going to be her BIS options, just you know, everything is for her. But the good thing about her weapon banner is that she's going to be right next to Linnea, and Linnea is also a bow character. The first grade magic you can technically use on her pretty well if you go on her weapon banner and you lose to this, because generally speaking the Obsidian set already gives her a lot of crit rate, so if you're using making her a crit rate weapon, you'll potentially have the chance of capping out a crit rate, which is why having a crit damage weapon is pretty nice for Chasca. Other than that, you know, a weapon such as Aqua Simulacra that's also very good. Going for Thundering Pulse, pretty decent option as well. However, she's not using her normal attack that much, so it's purely going to be a stat stick. Other options with crit rate, you know, Polar Star, Hunter's Path, Skyward Hop, those kind of crit ratio weapons are also pretty good for her. If you do have it, obviously going to be better than most of the other 4-star options that she's got. If you have any of these, slot her in. Ammo's Bow is kind of fine, but it does give her attack. Considering how much attack percentage you're going to be having built onto her, you can easily overcap and have diminishing return on attack percentage pretty much. Plus, I've heard that the passive on Ammo's Bow can't really be used for Chasca that much. We obviously have to test it out whenever she arrives, but Ammo's Bow generally isn't going to be that good compared to the other 5-star options that you have for her at this point. Now, she has a lot of other good 4-star options, best of which is going to be rather the new event bow that you're going to be getting. The passive is rather nice, only sad part is that it's going to be again giving her a little bit too much attack percentage. Now, if you're going for the Battle Pass, right, the Sign of the Blazing Sun, actually a pretty good stat stick for her, but I mean, I don't see many of us going for the Battle Pass options. You know, Very Destined Hunt, also a Battle Pass option, rather nice for her. You know, it gets the utility of you crowd controlling a bit, and considering how much Chasca would value a bit of crowd control in AoE situation, I think this has potential. Other free-to-play like the Song of Stillness, Chainbreaker, Hamayumi, those kind of options, if you really want to go for it, it's still pretty fine 4-star that you can use for Chasca. With that, we're going to be moving on to the most interesting discussion for any character, which is going to be the team building. I love discussing about this because I love mix and matching team comps, and which is something that Chasca is generally great at because she has a lot of different team comps potential if you want to play around. Now, something to note about Chasca whenever you're team building is that she's basically a charge attack character. Therefore, any sub DPS character that requires you normal attack weaving like Yelan, Xingqiu is technically not going to be good on her team because you're not going to be able to do that, which is why she values sub DPS character that can automatically do damage, and better yet, they can also buff her as well, which in this case, the only character that I think can satisfy that at this point is going to be Furina. Right, Furina is probably going to be a lovely and best in slot teammate for most of Chasca team. This kind of like a must-have requirement already if you're looking for some of the best Chasca team that you want to build, right? Other than that, you know, character that can also do automatically outfield damage with like Yai Miko, Fischl, or you know, Auroron. Those characters you guys can consider. Other character like Albedo, Chiori can also do automatic outfield damage, but of course, you're not going to be having them on Chasca team because they have no use for her, which is why these 3 characters here are very much valuable on her team. And then of course she would love to have other characters that give her a lot of buffing, which in this case, yeah, you can see Bennett, Shilonin, and Kazuya. Most likely going to be Bennett, Shilonin, and Kazuya are technically rare cases, but we're still going to discuss a little bit about them in a little bit. Plus, if you guys remember with her passive talent 1, she wanted to have a variety of different elemental character on the team as well to make fully use of her passive for that extra 65% damage increase, which is rather nice. So if you're looking into a 4 different elemental team at this point, the only team I can think of that's going to do very well for Chasca is going to be Furina, Bennett, and Auroron. That obviously is a pretty expensive team for your account because Furina is a 5-star character that most of your team wants. Bennett, of course, is also a character that most of your team wants. Auroron is a good thing because he is on Chasca banner. You're probably going to be having at least 1 or 2 copies of him whenever you try to pull for Chasca, so hopefully good luck on that. Now Auroron, some of the reason why Auroron is good for Chasca team is that he has the ability to hop with energy regen, which is rather good. And obviously if you do have a C6 Auroron, you're going to be having extra damage increase for Chasca, which is pretty nice. Now obviously you can replace either Fischl or Yai Miko in Auroron's place depending on how much invested you've got in those characters. And obviously if if they are very much invested, then yes, those characters are going to be a lot suitable for those positions. Now, another good team comp options if you're looking into a bit of other reliable elemental reactions is going to be a Furina, Bennett, and a Xiangling team at this point in time. So you're going to be getting Pyro Resonance on top of that, even though you're not going to be getting the maximum stack for her passive, so kind of like a makeup for it. Obviously, once again, as we've mentioned, the bullet is considered to be random at this point, so you're not going to be knowing how much of a reaction damage Chasca is going to be able to pull off. However, since there is Furina and Xiangling on the team, you know, they can potentially do vaporize damage off field for you, so overall that's still going to be a makeup for it. Now, as I've mentioned before, you can potentially think about going with an elemental goblet for Chasca, and mainly going to be only in the situations of you building her in kind of like a mono team, right? For example, if you're going with a mono Pyro, obviously that's kind of cope at this point. You're running with a Bennett, Xiangling, and potentially a Dia. That's obviously going to be a huge trade-off considering you've got, you know, Furina on some of the other teams. But if you're considering going with an elemental type goblet, in this case you can go with a Pyro goblet, then yeah, that's okay, but also you're not going to be able to get the maximum stack from her passive and only one stack of it, which is like a 15% increase. That's going to be very hard. Or, you know, mono Cryo, mono Hydro, or even mono Electro, I don't think they have any good character lineup for you to run for a mono team, so it's not something that you can do unless you really want to play around with Chasca teams. Or, you know, if we're talking about playing around with her team, there's some other team comp variation that you may potentially can try out. You know, for example, like a Cryo Hydro team where you have a Furina, Shanhar, or potentially a Charlotte for a whole team healing. You know, obviously Freeze team is pretty much dead at this point unless Hoyoverse do something about it. And of course, also C0 Shanhar, it's a little bit hard to use Chasca because her stacks actually runs out pretty much after Chasca first bullet attack. Considering that Chasca do shoot up to at least 3 rounds, Shanhar can't really do much here unless you have like a C1 Shanhar. But overall, that does turn pretty much Chasca into a cryo element character, which is kind of a bit fun to see. I mean, if you want to play around with an overload team, you know, like a Bennett Visual and a Yai Miko potentially, you can play around with that. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as her 2 first team comp that we've mentioned, or, you know, a Cryo Pyro team running with Bennett, Shanhar, and Furina. Those characters focus a lot into buffing Chasca damage. You can also get the maximum of her passive stack right here. Overall, it can be pretty fun. I'll probably try this team out whenever Chasca come and hopefully potentially see a good result of this team. Now, as we've mentioned before, there are other characters that can buff Chasca pretty well as well. Obviously, that's going to be Shilonen. But at this point in time, I probably not going to be recommending you slotting Shilonen in your Chasca team, because again, I don't think Shilonen element actually counts into Chasca passive talent stacking. So that's basically wasted 1 slot onto your team building, and also wasting Shilonen being on Chasca team when you can technically have her on your other team comp, which she's definitely going to be making use of a lot better. So I'm probably going to be crossing out Shilonen being on Chasca team right here, and another character is going to be Kazuha. If you can consider it, I think Kazuha can be okay if you really want to slot him in. You can run him on a team, you know, such as Furina, Bennett, and Kazuha if you want to force it. Again, it's going to be a little bit hard for it to play out, and I'll probably going to test this team out whenever Chasca come. I kind of want to officially look into how good this team can potentially be. But once again, Kazuha is a little bit hard to place on Chasca team when, yeah, you can get him on other teams as well. So after we've discussed everything about pre-release information of Chasca at this point in time, how good do you think Chasca potentially is going to be? Is that I think she has pretty nice potential. Her variation in different character in the team comps can be pretty fun and refreshing. It can be a little bit confusing when you're new to her, but she's going to be feeling more like a different elemental character rather than an Anemo DPS at this point in time, because she's not going to be doing Anemo damage. It's very hard for her to do that. She does have good damage potential, so definitely you're not going to be disappointed whenever you pull for her, right? She's still going to be able to help you clear the abyss. I'm pretty much sure about that. However, her best team comp requirement right now is very strict, even though though it seems that she's more of a flexible character, right? As I've mentioned before, she's pretty much stuck in like a Farina Bennett team comp, and then the last slot is going to be a flexible building for you, unless you're not looking into, you know, her damage doing the best potential, then you can disregard that. But if you're looking into best teams, it's only going to be Farina Bennett at this point. I can't really see any other variation of it, so it's rather going to be strict. Which is, guys, I guess that's everything I have to say regarding Chasca at this point in time. Obviously, again, this is only pre-release information, and hopefully it's going to have a lot of changing once she officially comes. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think about Chasca at this point. Guys, if you're still on the fence of whether which character you should be pulling for in patch 5.2, I have a very in-depth video going through that, so be sure to check out the video right here. Again, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to not miss out on my future Genshin Impact videos. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me to this part of the video, guys, and with that, I wish you a super day, and I'll catch you on my next video.